Last night's exchanges, Florida Senator Marco Rubio.
Good morning.
Senator, we always appreciate when you get up with us, especially the night after, because people want to hear what you thought about what you did. First off, we know that you were trailing in some polls by 20, some by 8. You had to knock it out of the park. Do you think you did it?
Yeah, we felt really good about the debate. Look, we are gaining steam here in Florida. We feel good about our chances. We have a great team. And what's happening as well is that a growing number of voters here in the state are starting to realize, you know, there's some people, they're not large numbers of people, but there are voters here that are supporting Ted Cruz or supporting John Kasich, and they're realizing in Florida the only one that can beat Donald Trump is Marco Rubio. And so there's those voters are starting to jump on board. They realize that a vote for Kasich or Cruz in Florida is in essence a vote for Donald Trump. So that's adding to our momentum here, and I feel good about that going into Tuesday.
Well, how about the fact, Senator, and while last night was a sober discussion on policy, some are saying, well, you know, Kasich and Rubio and Cruz missed the opportunity. Trump is clearly the front runner across the country, and nobody really went after him. I'm not talking about insults. I'm talking about substantive differences on how to lead the country.
Well, I think that actually did happen. On policy issue after policy issue, for example, when I had the opportunity, I tried to explain why Donald's answer on an issue was not the right approach. But you know, there's no winning here, right? I mean, if you have a debate where everyone's going after each other, then people say they don't like it. If you have a debate where we're debating issues, then people say, oh, it's too boring. Bottom line is this is not a sport, and this is not entertainment. Debates are not about entertaining people. They're about informing people. We are talking about the presidency of the United States of America, the most powerful political office in the world, the commander-in-chief of the most powerful military in the history of mankind. We have to elect someone who doesn't, you know, isn't just entertaining, but someone who, when they get there, are able to do the job well. A lot is at stake here, and I think that's what you hope to see out of a debate, and I hope that's what people saw last night.
Well, something that's at stake for my generation is Social Security. People are saying we're going to run out of money. You've said that. I want to listen to what you challenged Donald Trump on last night and then get your reaction. Let's take a listen.
Social Security can stay the way it is lying. Any politician that goes around saying we don't have to do anything, all we have to do is raise a few taxes or just leave it the way it is, they're not being honest with you. Social Security will go bankrupt, and it will bankrupt country with it. It will be debilitating to our economy, and our children deserve better than to inherit a debt crisis.
It's my absolute intention to leave Social Security the way it is, not increase the age, and to leave it as is. I want to leave Social Security as is. I want to make our country rich again so we can afford it.
Is that possible to leave it as it is?
It is not possible. It is not possible. And that is the problem that we're having, is that for far too long that's been the attitude people have taken. So every year Social Security goes further and further into debt and closer into crisis. And what I mean by crisis is not just Social Security, it's the country. That's what's driving the debt now. What is possible is to say, if we act now, we don't have to make any changes for people that are retired or about to retire.
Right.
But that means people like me, I'll be 45 in May. There is no way my Social Security works the same way as it did for my parents. So it either won't exist or we make some changes to it, and they're not unreasonable changes, but we have to make them now. And anyone who says differently is simply misleading you. It's just not true.
And one of the changes you detailed last night is start raising the retirement age to 67, 68, 69, and then top out at 70, right?
For future generations. That's already happening. It's going to go up to 67. So the way it's structured now, I'm supposed to retire at 67. I may have to retire instead at 68. That is not too much to ask of us, my generation, in exchange for leaving Social Security the way it is for our parents and grandparents and saving it for future generations.
Senator, on Wednesday, Donald Trump said Islam hates us. That issue was addressed last night. This is the two of you talking about that, and then I have a question for you after. Let's listen.
I know that a lot of people find appeal in the things Donald says because he says what people wish they could say. The problem is presidents can't just say anything they want. It has consequences here and around the world.
Marco talks about consequences. Well, we've had a lot of consequences, including airplanes flying into the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and could have been the White House. I don't want to be so politically correct. I like to solve problems. We have a serious, serious problem of hate.
See, I'm not interested in being politically correct. I'm not interested in being politically correct. I'm interested in being correct.
All right, Senator, words, you're right, do have consequences, and you do have responsibilities to to the people you represent when you are the president. But the voters, what do you say to them who are tired of the PC rhetoric and they like Donald Trump for saying exactly what they're thinking? What's your response to that?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to be correct. The bottom line is, yes, does Islam have a radicalization problem? It most absolutely does. It is also correct to say that there are Americans who are Muslims who serve this country in uniform and love the United States of America. There are Muslims who have died in the service of this country. There are Muslims around this world that have protected our men and women in uniform. It's interpreters, you know, people on the ground. Look, I gave the story last night of a couple who are missionaries in a Muslim country and how they rely on Muslim families to protect them. And so, look, I think it's very, when someone who's running for president or is going to be president class these blanket statements, what you do is you lose the focus on what we should be focused on, which is radical Islam. Right. Radicalization of Islam is a serious problem globally, and that needs to be confronted.
Sure.
But I don't think it's correct to say that all Muslims hate America. That's just not true.
But the, you know, people who are watching right now and people who were watching last night, Senator, say, well, the thing about what Trump is saying is whatever we're doing right now, it just isn't working.
Well, what we're doing right now is not enough. That's why it's not working. But saying all Muslims hate America is not going to make things any better, and it isn't accurate. The fact is that if we want to defeat radical Islam, we're going to have to work with Muslims to do it. In essence, it will take Muslims themselves to stand up against radicalization, and we're going to have to work with them. When we talk about the Middle East, when they say to arm the Kurds, or they say to work with the Sunnis in that region, those are Muslims. When they talk about working with Egypt and Saudi Arabia and Jordan, those are Muslims. When we talk about confronting radicals out there and using local tribes to reject ISIS, those are Muslims that we need to work with. So my point is, I think it's important to have a president that tells you the truth. And the truth is, there is a serious problem of radicalization in Islam, and we need to defeat it. And there are Muslims that are not radicalized who we need to work with to make that happen.
That's a great point. Now, let's take a look at a couple of polls. Yeah, the Fox News poll that came out a couple of days ago has you trailing by 23 points, 43-20. With Cruz getting 16 right on your heels. However, the Washington Post and Univision did a poll, and you're right there. Much different story, 38-31, with Cruz with a solid 19
in the margin of error.
Within the margin of error. So that is what a huge difference about two credible organizations in the same state. In that same poll, Senator, before you comment, 60% say that Florida Republicans say that if you do not win your state, that you should drop out. Your answer?
Yeah, look, when I ran for the U.S. Senate 5 years ago, I ran against the incumbent sitting governor of Florida. I was like at 4% in the polls, and he was like at 65 or 70, had an 80% approval rating. Polls are polls. They change all the time. And the only poll that matters is the one they're going to take on Tuesday. All I can tell you is we're working hard every single day. We feel really good about our campaign. I feel very good about our momentum and our progress. Voters will make their decision on Tuesday. Sure. I believe we're going to win Florida. I really do. And I think we're going to prove that Tuesday night. And I have great optimism about what that means for our campaign moving forward.
Sure.
But I can't control polls, and I certainly can't live by them, and I don't make my decisions based on them.
Senator, about 2 hours from right now, Dr. Ben Carson is going to join Donald Trump on a stage in Palm Beach and say that I've looked over the field of remaining candidates. I'm going with Trump. Had you reached out to Dr. Carson, and how do you feel about his endorsement?
Well, I spoke to him on the day that they announced that he would be suspending his campaign, and we had a good conversation. And I don't think I don't remember speaking since then. But everyone's going to get endorsements in this race. I have more than my fair share of endorsements. Multiple governors, South Carolina's governor, New Mexico, Arkansas, you name, North Carolina. I mean, we have a great group of people that have endorsed us, and we have. Most of them, I have more Senate endorsements than everybody else. A lot of congressional members that have endorsed me. Endorsements are great. It shows you can bring people together. Everyone is going to get their share of endorsements. I respect Ben Carson very much. He made what he thought was the right decision. I ultimately don't think that that's how voters are going to make their decisions here in Florida. And look, I think a growing number of Florida voters have realized that even the ones that are supporting John Kasich and Ted Cruz that don't want it to be Donald Trump are realizing that neither one of those guys has a chance to win in Florida. Ted Cruz is not going to win Florida. John Kasich is not going to win Florida. And if you don't want Donald Trump to be our nominee, a vote for John Kasich or a vote for Ted Cruz is in essence a vote for Donald Trump. So I think you'll see more of those voters come our way as well.
What did your mom say about your performance?
she was happy with it.
I'm sure she's glad you're back home.
Look, it was a great experience to be in my.
Yeah.
Well, it was great to be in Miami last night at this debate in front of so many family and friends, and it was really, we enjoyed doing it very much. We look forward to the next one.
Well, you're in the home
Thank you so much. Thanks for waking up this early with us. We appreciate that. 44 years old running for president.
Thank
That's
you.
pretty impressive.
Right.